Hello ladies and gents, hope you're well, and today we're going to talk about this year's A race and we're going to talk about long runs and recce's. But before we start the video, please like, subscribe and share. So this year's A race is the South Downs Way 50, which is obviously half of the South Downs Way 100. But for me, the South Downs Way 50 is actually in a nicer part of the course. I spent a lot of time from like sort of the Winchester side. So obviously the 100 miler is Winchester to Eastbourne. Very fast 100 miler for those quick runners out there. And I've spent a lot of the time on the Winchester side. But for me, the sort of the back end of it is just a much nicer part of the course. You're a lot higher up and obviously you can just see a lot more. The views are a lot nicer. The ground's a bit more runnable. It's just a really, really nice 50 miler. I don't know anyone that's ever done it and had a bad word to say about it. So that's my A race this year. I want to do that relatively quick. And the main goal of that is actually to improve sort of the foundation of my running. When I first got into running, I got straight into trail running and I probably skipped over some of the foundations that you need to do of obviously building up speed, working on sort of your cadence, getting good at your 5K, 10K, half marathon, marathon. I sort of just went straight into trail running and started doing ultras. And after the 100 mile I did last year, I was like, no, this time I need to start focusing on that. So I've sort of done it the arse about way and done it the wrong way around. But it's okay because it's all running and it's all going in the right direction. And that's all that matters. So good thing about the South Downs Way, not only is it like nice views, etc. The course is really nice, as in it's relatively hard. I know when Dan Lawson did the 100 miler, he was actually wearing carbon alpha flies, which is interesting to see. So the ground, it's chalky, it's very firm, can be a bit of a mare when it's wet just because it's slippy and you get loads of stuff like the chalk sticking to your feet. But if it's dry, it's a very, very quick course. It's interesting because where it's so chalky and so rocky, but not technical, it's still that sort of ground that if you're not paying attention, you could roll your ankle and that sort of stuff. But yeah, apart from that, it's a really nice part of the country and it's just a really nice 50 miler. So yeah, my relevant training at the moment is just working on a little bit more speed, still staying on the trails, still building the endurance, but you know, looking to just get a bit of a better leg turnover so that when it comes to that 50 miler, I can do that relatively quick by my standard. So now let's talk about the purpose of the long run and how we can tie that in with our recce's. So obviously the purpose of the long run is ideally replicating something similar to your race, also the pace of the race that you're probably going to do. If you're one of those fortunate people, obviously you can run a little bit quicker than say your long run pace. Now, while you're doing the long run, obviously you're there to build endurance sort of within your muscles. You know, you are exposing your body sort of to similar conditions of what the race might be. It's not always going to match up, but that's ideally what you're trying to do. You're trying to build your aerobic base and obviously your endurance capacity to be able to tolerate what you're about to do, basically. Now, with intensities of long runs, usually they need to be kept relatively easy because the biggest stress that comes from a long run is the time on feet and obviously the distance. You know, if you go out for an hour easy, and let's say that's 6 miles, but then you go out for 2 hours easy, which let's say is 12 miles, you know, you're adding 50% volume there. So you've got to make sure you're doing these easy, unless you do an easy run with a fast finish, which is a really good way to replicate how you want to be sort of at a race. It's always good with racing to build slow, build into the race and obviously finish strong. If you sort of have that approach with your races, you're going to be quite consistent in that, sort of just plodding, picking people off, and obviously probably crushing the time of whatever your goal is. Finishing strong is obviously what you want to be in a race. You want to be finished, done in, but finishing strong. Whereas a lot of people, they go out too quick and then they end up death marching in or going too slow. So if we're saying looking at a 10 miler and you look at someone's splits and the first 5 are really quick and the second 5 are slow, you probably know that that athlete has gone out too fast. So we try and flip it on its head. So you're starting slow and finishing strong. Anyway, that's sort of the intensity and obviously the purpose of the long run. One of the most important things about long runs being easy, and if you're combining that with recce's, is if you're keeping the intensity low, you can obviously take it in. So that's quite important when you're doing a recce of a course and you want to know where you're going. So when it comes to race day, there's no sort of stone unturned. You know, if you're running at a really high intensity on your recce's, there's just certain things you're going to skip over. You're not going to take things in. You know, certain gates, certain routes, certain junctions where you're coming to turn off. You might miss that on race day, because obviously usually at race day you're going to be running at a slightly higher intensity. Whereas the recce, take it easy, enjoy it, take it all in, understand the ground, understand your surroundings. If you use zones with your training, so if you use zones with your training, think about bouncing between zone 1 to zone 3, and ideally the zone 3 is for, you know, your hillier sections. Also with the easy long run, you know, you're doing that session so it doesn't impact the following week's training. You know, you want to be back on your plan on the Monday, doing sort of the volume you need to be doing. So if you run long runs just a little bit too hard, you're probably going to carry that fatigue into your next training week, which is going to cause you issues anyway. And then that week looks like a recovery week, when actually it was meant to be a proper full training week. But because you ran too hard on the easy long run, you're paying the price now. So let's talk a little bit about recce's now and how you can navigate those the best. So for me, recce, the hardest parts of the course, the trickiest bits when it comes to navigation, but also certain bits of terrain that you might not like. So with the Dragon's Back race on day 1, a lot of people will recce Crib Goch because they have fears and phobias around that part of the course. And when I did that race, you could see some people that were really, you know, they lost a lot of time on that part of the course, and that's totally understandable. But also what this does as well is, a lot of the time when you're looking on Instagram or whatever and you're looking at these parts, you're thinking they're far worse than they are. You get there and you go, oh, actually it's not that bad, weather permitting, especially with that place. So yeah, recce, the hardest parts of the course, because I know time is finite for a lot of people. So if you're getting on a course, make sure you're looking at the most important bits. Get up early and get it done, especially if you've got a big session. This just means it doesn't interfere with obviously your personal life too much. Also, usually the traffic's always going to be better if you get up early and get it done. Have you got friends doing the race? Do you know anyone that's doing the race? Buddy up with people. What this can do as well is, obviously you can have a car at the beginning and a car at the end. So you can do a point to point, which means you're maximising time on the course. The recce I just recently did, I had to sort of do an out and back, which is annoying, but it's okay. Whereas if you're with people, they can leave their car at the end and then you can have your car at the beginning. It just makes the whole process of running a lot nicer, a lot smoother, but also you're maximising your time on the course. Get accustomed to what your watch can do as well. That is actually a skill in itself when it comes to doing these runs where you're relying on your watch. It's understanding like your zoom in and zoom out features on the map. And I literally did this last week and I know about this, I was too far zoomed out. So when I came to a junction, they were basically side by side. I went 20 meters up the wrong path because on my watch, it looked like the arrow was on the right path. Zoomed in a little bit, and I had to go back and go up the right path. So make sure you're doing that. Test all your kit, whether it's your pack, all the stuff you're carrying in the pack, your shoes. This is a really good time to go and see what sort of shoe you're going to wear for that race as well. Prime example, I thought I was going to wear a shoe for this 50 miler, wore it the other day on that recce, and I was like, actually, I need a different shoe for this terrain. So it's just a nice little trial and error. It's better to do that in a recce or a long run than doing it on your race day. Understand the recce route you're going to do. Does it have water stops on course? Is there cafes? Also, when it comes to you stopping the recce, make sure you're stopping at a place where it's really easily accessible, because when you then hopefully come to the next recce to do the route and pick up where you've left off, you've got parking, etc. And if there's certain sections on the race route that just seem of non-importance, don't worry about it. Like I said earlier, recce the hardest parts, especially if time is an issue for you. Like I said a little bit earlier, make sure you're carrying all the relevant kit, not from just a safety perspective, just so you can get a feel for how the pack feels. That's quite important because a lot of the times we're always running very light. We're doing these short, sharp sessions. Comes to the long run or the recce, we put the pack on, we're like, bloody hell, that is heavy, and you're not really conditioned to it. And if you found that video helpful, or you're going out for a recce or whatever, please share it to people that it may help. But also, don't forget to drop a comment, like, subscribe, and share.